Hey there. Welcome to the Life in the Short Rows podcast. My name's Robert, and just like the thumbnail and the title says, I'm going to talk to you about unanswered prayer. So just stick with me a minute, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happened in my life and talk to you about what we can do that might help sometimes. First, I'm going to start off with a story, okay? And it's about my own personal life. When I was a little boy, this is not, I'm in my 60s now, and I'm not trying to get sympathy and all that kind of stuff, so just bear with me. But when I was a little boy, my dad and I, let's say, we did not have a good relationship. There were times that I was just so afraid of what was going to happen when he got home, and we're just going to leave it at that, that I used to pray, and please don't hate me for this, but I used to pray that something would happen to him before he got home, that he'd get in a car wreck or something. I don't know. I was a little boy, and I was just terrified of my father. And he wasn't like a brutal man, but emotionally and physically, there were a lot of things that I'm not even going to talk about. It doesn't matter now. It's all gone. It's just say, in the mind of a little boy, I didn't see any way out of it. I used to pray to God that something would happen to him before he got home. Now, I'm kind of like Garth Brooks in that song, Unanswered Prayer. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayer. I'm glad nothing ever happened to him. And that's selfish of me, I guess, to say that. But I'm just trying to be straight with you. I don't know how I would have lived with the guilt if something did happen to him. So I'm glad nothing did. He lived to be an old man, and, we mended our fences much later, and, things went on from there. But from a selfish side, I'm glad nothing happened to him. I don't know how my mom would have made it. I don't know how my sister and I would have made it. I don't know what would have happened to us. All I know is I'm glad that prayer wasn't answered. Okay, now there's something else I want to talk to you about. And there's this old story, and it's called the Chinese farmer story. Now, you may have heard of that Chinese farmer story. I'm going to pull it up so I can keep everything right here, keep everything in order of the way it goes. Now, you may have heard of this, and if you have, just bear with me. But I think if you haven't heard of it, I think you're going to like it. So there's this is like 2,000 years ago, so the story goes. There's this farmer who had a horse, his only horse, and his horse ran away. Okay? So when his horse ran away, all of his neighbors came over, and they were like, "Oh man, this is so bad. I'm so sorry your horse ran away. It's just terrible news." And they said, "Don't you just think it's terrible? You don't seem like you're too upset. And don't you think this is terrible news?" And he goes, "Yeah, maybe." So then the next thing that happened was, a little while later, a few days or a week later or whatever it was, guess what? The horse came back. Not only did the horse come back, but when the horse came back, it brought other wild horses back with it. So now the farmer went from having one horse to no horse for a little while to now he's got several horses, which really raises him up in the community. So maybe. The next thing that happened was, I about skipped one. Now, there we go. His son was trying to tame one of those wild horses. Well, when his son was out trying to tame one of the wild horses, he got bucked off and hurt pretty bad and ended up breaking his leg. So then the neighbors came over and said, "Man, we thought you had terrible luck when you lost your horse. We just thought things were terrible. And then we thought you had great luck when your horse came back and brought these wild horses back. Don't you think that was great luck?" He goes, maybe. And now your son has broken his leg and he can't help on the farm. And this is terrible news. How are you going to deal with this? And the farmer says, well, I don't know. Maybe it's good news. Maybe it's bad news. I hate for my son, to break his leg. But they say, oh, it's terrible news. And he goes, maybe. So while his son was healing up, convalescing, whatever you want to call it, from the broken leg he got trying to tame one of the wild horses, guess what happened? They got into a big war. China was in a big war, and back then they could, it's like draft you, could script you, they could make you go to fight for your country or whatever the cause was, your area. So the army came to the village, and they were getting all the able-bodied young men and gathering them up to take them off to war, to be soldiers in a war. Guess what happened? They got to the farmer's house. They came to get his son. His son couldn't go into the war. He couldn't be forced into the war. Why not? Because he had a broken leg. They got trying to tame one of the wild horses that everybody thought was great. Then everybody thought it was a tragedy when he broke his leg. But now that broken leg kept him from being drug out into a war. The neighbors came over and said, oh, isn't it wonderful? Your son didn't have to go to war. What was the farmer's reaction? You guessed it. Maybe. So that story's been passed around, told for a long time. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good little story. I like the way that story went. And over the years, I kind of learned a little bit more about trying to take on the farmer's attitude. What I learned was that what I thought was bad news at the time sometimes would turn out to be, well, it actually was good news. Sometimes things I thought were good news turned out to be, well, bad news. Sometimes I would really pray for something and I wouldn't get it. And then it ended up down the road, I realized like, oh, okay, it's a good thing I didn't get it, what I asked for, because this would have happened. Sometimes I prayed for things and I did get it. And it turned out to be a bad idea, a bad thing that I got. For me, what I came to kind of realize over the years is that I really don't know what the heck's going on. I don't know what the future holds. I know what the past was. I kind of know what the present is, but I certainly don't know what the future holds. So I kind of have learned over the years to take on, I guess they call it a stoic approach now, a little more stoic. It's like things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. At the time, it may seem like it's great, and it turns out to be awful. At the time, it may seem like it's awful, and it may turn out to be great. But the bottom line is, we can't really do much about it either way. So why should we let things like that get us all bent out of shape? I've kind of learned to roll with the punches at this stage in life. And, for the last several years of my life, I've faced a lot of adversity. I've faced, just like you do. We all, I'm not nothing special. We all go through this crazy stuff in our lives, things happening that, we're like, what the heck? What now? I can't take it anymore. And so, we got to kind of be like the Chinese farmer, so we don't really know. Maybe good, maybe bad, maybe one thing now, maybe something else tomorrow. But what I want you to take away from this, and this is the message that I'm really wanting you to take away from, and listen very closely. You have survived everything that has ever happened to you. You survived it. You wouldn't be watching this video. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you hadn't survived it. Now, I'm not saying it was easy, but I am saying this. You made it through. Okay? You know what else? You're going to make it through the next one. So I want you to understand that. Sometimes those unanswered prayers are good. Sometimes they're bad. We don't really know. We'll never really know in most cases whether a prayer was answered or unanswered. Doesn't really make a lot of difference. We're going to live our lives. We're going to do the best we can. And what I want you to take from this is that very same thing. It's your life. Live it. Do the best you can. Don't worry about what did or did not happen in the past. And don't worry about what is going to or is not going to happen in the future. You know, they say live in the moment, live in the day. That's kind of silly in a way. I mean, I like the sentiment behind it, but it is kind of silly in the way because we don't have anything but the moment, you know. But the key is not that this is the moment. The key is that we live it. All right? Live your best life. Don't worry about what did or didn't happen in the past. Do what you can and have confidence in yourself that no matter what life throws you, you're going to make it through it. Okay? Thank you for watching. You know, subscribe if you like it. Share, comment. Maybe somebody else needs to hear this message. Share it with them. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.